And all in total, I think I put about roughly $5,000 into the property to add that third bedroom. So in those 7 months of purchasing the property, fixing it up, and getting it rented out, I was able to force about $20,000 of appreciation to it.
You're listening to the We Love Equity Real Estate Show, a podcast that discusses the intricacies of real estate investing with your host, Marcus E. Maloney. Marcus is a real estate investor best known for being the equity king. He's been awarded that moniker because he and his team find amazing real estate deals. He will be talking with investors who have done some transformational things in the real estate industry. They'll discuss their process, their strategies, and how their investments transform their lives and the communities they invest in. We welcome you to the We Love Equity Real Estate Show.
Welcome to another show, the We Love Equity listeners and family. Today, I have definitely an inspirational guest. His name is Connor Anderson. Connor is a young guy that's really doing some things with BiggerPocket out in Denver. And today he's going to share his story, and he's definitely going to talk about his role in investing, his role at BiggerPockets, and what he sees for the future as a real estate investor. So Connor, real quick, man, welcome to the show. Welcome to the family. Share with us, give us a brief introduction of who you are and how you got started in real estate.
Hey, Marcus, thank you very much for having me on today. So like you said, I'm a young investor. I'm 25 years old, originally from Michigan, but now live in Denver, and I work for BiggerPockets. My role at BiggerPockets is advertising sales and a lot of other business-to-business relationships. So I sell the ads for the podcast. When you listen to the podcast, I sell the advertising for our newsletter, and then our conference that we just had. If you guys weren't at BiggerPockets Conference 2019, you got to be at BiggerPockets Conference 2020 because we're going to do even bigger and even better. I met Marcus there actually, and he was great, and he said he really enjoyed it. So you guys need to be at the conference next year. But some other things I do for BiggerPockets is help with marketing, and then also put together affiliate relationships that we have throughout the site. So that's a little bit about what I do at BiggerPockets specifically.
Yeah, guys, I did get a chance to meet Connor at BPCon 2019 at lunch. And again, guys, like Connor said, if you wasn't at this one here in Nashville, you definitely need to be at the conference in 2020. You'll learn a lot. You know, there's a lot of education, a lot of great speakers, a lot of content, and it'll inspire you to get out there and get busy as a real estate investor. So Connor, not only do you work at BP, but you are an aspiring investor, and you've started with the house hack. So kind of tell me about that, man. How did you go from Michigan over to Denver, and then how did you get into real estate investing?
Totally. So I'll kind of start with my journey of actually coming to the idea of real estate investing. So it was my senior year of college at Western Michigan University, and it was the fall classes were just starting, and I was really just kind of thinking about, what do I want to do with my life post-college? And a goal of mine since I can remember was to just be wealthy. So I have the flexibility to do what I want and not have to worry about money. So what I thought to myself was, how do people become wealthy? And immediately I thought of some of the successful and wealthy people that I had seen on TV or had met in person. And a common theme was real estate investing. So I'm like, you know what? I think my path is going to be in real estate investing. That's how I'm going to become wealthy. So just one day I was going for a jog, and I downloaded a real estate investing podcast. And it was not the BiggerPockets podcast. Actually, it was Rod Cleese. I think he calls it cash flow through multifamily. Yeah. Yep. So I listened to a few episodes of that while I was on, walking in class or running, and I learned a good amount. But one day I was just talking to a friend in between classes at college, and I mentioned I was listening to this real estate podcast, he said, "Oh, you listen to Bigger Pockets?" I'm like, "No, what is Bigger Pockets?" So I've been listening to the wrong real estate podcast for probably about a month. And as soon as he turned me on to Bigger Pockets, I listened to every single episode. I think at the time there's about 200 episodes of the Bigger Pockets podcast out there. And so my job in college was I was a delivery driver for a company called Fastenal. And I was driving a nice Ram 1500 truck all over Kalamazoo, Michigan. And for about 9 months, I listened to every single episode of the Bigger Pockets podcast while I was working. And during that time period, I also landed a job in Denver for a company called Oracle NetSuite as a business development representative. So after listening to about a couple dozen episodes of the Bigger Pockets podcast, I realized, oh, wow, this Bigger Pockets is in Denver as well. Like, as soon as I get there, I need to check them out. So I moved to Denver in July of 2017, right after I graduated college. Started working at Oracle NetSuite as a business development representative. About a month or two into that job, I reached out to Scott Trench, who is now the CEO of Bigger Pockets, and grabbed lunch with him just to kind of, meet him, discuss real estate investing, get his advice on how to get my first house hack. So I did that, didn't talk to him for probably about 6 more months. And then a couple months after I met Scott, I heard Craig Curlop on the Bigger Pockets podcast. And Craig's about a year older than me, is real estate investing, house hacking, and had a lot of similar interests to me. So I reached out to Craig. Craig and I grabbed dinner and, network, talked about house hacking and stuff like that, and became fast friends. So
let me stop you real quick, Connor, because you gave some very key things. First of all, while you were in college, you had this aspiration to be wealthy. You had this aspiration to be successful, and you did your research and you found out that, quite a few of the people that I see as wealthy, they got their start either in real estate or they have some real estate holdings. And then you started doing your research, more research. So I just want to say, man, congratulations on you for having the initiative, first of all, at that age to say, what do I want to do? I'm going to be getting out of college. What's next for me? And real estate was that next step. Absolutely. Rod Cleef's content is amazing, but getting started, that could be, miles above your head, because he's talking about, 500, 600 units and everything like that. But then you found Bigger Pockets, so just kind of like me, I found Bigger Pockets and it became infectious. It's like once you listen to that first episode, then it starts being inspirational to you. So kind of tell me about that. You met Scott, which was taking initiative again. You met Craig. So you and Craig's conversation was about house hacking, because that's how we got started. So
correct.
So Craig was an inspiration to you to get started on house hacking. So let's talk about that first house hack, man. What did that look like, and how did you get it done?
Yeah, totally. So my first house hack is slightly non-traditional. So I bought a 2-bed, 2.5-bath townhouse in Southeast Denver. And then the house that I bought had an unfinished basement. So what I did was add a 3rd bedroom into the basement. I live in the 3rd bedroom and then rent out the upstairs bedrooms to friends or just young professionals in the Denver area that are looking for a place to live, but they can't necessarily afford a studio or a 1-bedroom apartment, but still looking for a nice, safe place to live. Okay,
so you found a need, and you fulfilled that need. So how did you get the financing? You're a 25-year-old guy coming out of college. How did you get the financing? Where did you get the money, to buy this townhome?
Yeah, so the financing was for sure the most difficult part. Reason being that it was so difficult is because, one, I have a not a large, but I have student loan debt, which a lot of people my age are struggling with. And the other reason that it was difficult was I am in sales, so I have a base salary and then I have commission. But the way that a lender looks at your income is they need to see 2 years of tax returns. So since I've only been out of college for about a year and a half to 2 years, when I was looking for financing, I only really had 1 year of solid income, and they could only count my base salary, the lender. He couldn't count my base salary plus the commissions I had been earning because he needs to see 2 years of commissions. So they could only go off my base salary. And because of that, I could only afford I think I could only qualify for about $270,000, which may seem like a lot depending on what market you're in, but in Denver, $270,000 doesn't get you a ton. So what I ended up going with was an FHA loan, putting down 3.5%, and then that's a loan structure that I went with, just because the FHA loan has a lot of positives and negatives. Negatives being PMI for the life of the loan, so you have to pay that private mortgage insurance for the entire life of the loan. You can't refinance.
Real quick,
go ahead.
PMI, guys, is private mortgage insurance. So when you get an FHA loan, that's basically an insurance policy to the lender, in the event of default or anything like that. So just to kind of clarify what PMI is. Okay, go ahead, Craig. So I mean, not Craig, but Connor.
So another added, like a benefit of the FHA loan is that they will go higher on your debt to income ratio. So a typical conventional loan, they won't lend you more than 50% debt to income, and an FHA loan will go up to about 55 to 57% debt to income. So that's another reason why I went with the FHA loan compared to a conventional loan.
Okay. So that debt to income, guys, is how much debt you're carrying compared to how much annual income you're making. So the lender looks at that and determines if you can afford, a mortgage. So with FHA, they give you a little bit more leeway or variance, in how they can qualify you for that loan. So, okay, Connor, FHA loan, 270 qualification, the property, what was a townhome, where at in Denver, and what was the acquisition amount? How did you find it?
Yep. So I looked on the MLS. I worked with an awesome agent here in Denver, and him and I looked at probably 25 properties before we were able to hone in on what was going to work for my situation. The properties that we looked at first were $250,000 houses that had an accessory dwelling unit, which would have been awesome for house hacking, but these properties were completely unlivable. And I think people came in, bought them with cash, and probably bulldozed them to the ground and built brand new on these properties. So that's where I started at. Then I started looking at some single family houses that just needed a ton of work. And ended up just feeling most comfortable with this townhouse in Southeast Denver. I bought it, was listed for $270, and I offered them $260, and we got the offer accepted at $260 with an as-is purchase. So the seller was not going to fix anything that we noticed in the inspection that may be broken, and the offer was accepted on, I believe it was Black Friday of 2018. So that's a tip for everyone looking to buy in the off season, recognizing that you may have a little bit more leverage going into the holiday season when trying to buy a house, because a seller will recognize, if I don't accept this offer now, no one's going to be buying from likely October 31st through January 1st. It's a really, really hard time to sell a home. So buyers have a little bit more power in that time period. So in a hot market, I was able to get a property for $10,000 less than the asking price.
Yeah, and that's very key, is knowing your market. So and really that's kind of with every market. That period, because I'm a real estate agent as well, that period from the end of October to really like February 1st, that's the slowest period of the year to buy and sell houses, because one, it's the holiday season. People are gone, they're out, they're not thinking about, trying to move during the holiday season. So that's very, very key for negotiations. Like you said, the seller knows, hey, if I don't sell this house, now going into the holiday season, it's going to sit on the market. It's going to get stale. By the time, February comes, people are going to lowball offer them anyway, because it's going to be sitting on the market for 60, 90, 120 days. So very smart, very smart. So you got this property FHA financed at 260. It's a townhome. How much work needed?
So it was completely move-in ready. It has nice tile floors, decent carpeting. The work that needed to be done wasn't to any of the existing rooms or structures. The work that needed to be done was in the basement to build out the third bedroom to make it a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath compared to a 2-bedroom, 2.5 bath. So I grew up doing a lot of handyman work with my father since he's super handy. So I've done framing before. I've done plenty of painting before, putting up trim. So what I did was I framed out the walls and then found an electrician to do some can lighting, and then also found a drywaller to do the drywall for me. And then as soon as the drywall was in, I did the paint, put in carpeting in the room, and then also put up trim. So that took about, I'd say, 1.5 months to get that room all ready, so I could move into the basement bedroom, and then I could rent out the other top bedroom. And at that point, being successfully house hacking and living for free.
Okay, perfect. So what would you tell someone your age, or maybe even younger, just coming out of college? What would you tell them to do? Somebody starting out, how to get started. What would you tell them to do?
Yeah, so a lot of people's first instincts when they get out of college, get a nice paying job, is to immediately start spending lavishly, spending more than they would have in college. In college, a lot of people, you hear the stereotypes, live on ramen and cheap beer.
Yeah.
Continue to do that, maybe slightly above that. Maybe go to the grocery store and buy some chicken and vegetables and actually eat somewhat healthy, but don't spend lavishly on going out to nice restaurants. Don't spend lavishly on new clothes. Don't spend lavishly on a new car, because that's going to really, really affect your ability to start house hacking. So I would suggest, trying to live that college lifestyle for as long as you possibly can, so you can continue to save as much money as possible. And then by continuing to save as much money as possible, maybe even paying down some of that student loan debt, you can start to really, really make strides towards that first house hack property. And then once you get your first house hack property, come the world is your oyster, growing from there and being able to continue to invest in real estate.
So let me ask you this, Connor, because most people don't have that ideology or that discipline that you have in regards to knowing, hey, when I get out of college, don't go and buy, the new BMW 325i or something like that. So where did you learn all of this information from outside of Bigger Pockets? Because you can hear it, but not everybody can take what they hear and put it into practice. So was that something that you grew up with, being disciplined with your finances, kind of help some of my younger listeners know, how they actually can do this? Yeah,
so I definitely did not grow up with that super saver mentality. I grew up in a middle-class family, and we enjoyed, spending our money on a nice dinner from time to time and having a decent car and stuff like that. So I didn't grow up super, super frugal. Where I actually learned it was the Bigger Pockets Money podcast, not the Bigger Real Estate podcast. So the Bigger Pockets Money podcast, hosted by Mindy Jensen and Scott Trench.
Yep.
All they do is talk about personal finance and how people have been able to reach early financial independence through being super intentional with their spending, but also super aggressive when it comes to the amount that they invest. So that was what helped me change my mindset to being more of a saver compared to more of a spender. But also there's a couple of books that I read, like The Richest Man in Babylon, which is by far my favorite real estate, or not my real estate investing, by far my first favorite personal finance book.
Excellent.
Then also The Millionaire Next Door is another really good one that shows that the average millionaire in America is not the person that you see driving the Rolls Royce and eating caviar. It's someone who has, 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, drives a Toyota Corolla,
Yep.
maybe works as an accountant, but is super intentional with their savings and their spending. So those two books and the Bigger Pockets Money podcast helped change my mentality of a spender to a saver.
And that's very key what you're saying. Basically what you're saying is it's not how much money you make, but it's how much money you spend and what you do with the money that you make. Because I know people that, started out making $30,000, $40,000, with $50,000 in student loan debt, and they were able to pay off that student loan debt, making $30,000, $40,000, a year. Absolutely, they had to be frugal. They couldn't go out, to lavish dinners and everything like that. But that's just a part of the discipline, in the earlier years. When you set yourself up in the earlier years, like you're doing, on the back end, it'll be a lot better and more comfortable for you. So you have this townhouse. Okay, you are living in it. You have your mortgage payment. First of all, was it scary? Was it scary jumping out there doing it?
It wasn't as scary as I thought it would be. And I think the reason it wasn't as scary is because I had been educating myself for probably 2 years before I was able to buy that first house hack. And for that 2-year period, I had it in my mind, set in stone, that I will be buying a house hack as soon as I possibly can. So it wasn't scary to me because I knew the power of house hacking, and no matter how poorly the house hack went, or it can still go south for whatever reason, I would never regret the decision to buy my first property, rent out rooms, and live for free for a period of time. Everyone says, a lot of people are scared about investing in real estate and they just get analysis paralysis, but I always go with the mindset of don't wait to buy real estate and then wait. So that's my game plan. So it wasn't as scary as people make it out to be.
Okay. So we're rolling into vetting your tenants. How did you find your tenants and how did you vet them? Let's kind of go into that process. So you have this new property, you have this mortgage, insurance, light bill, gas bill, water bill, everything. It's a big step up going from college to now owning. So how did you make that transition? How did you find those tenants?
Yep. So I can go into a little bit of numbers here as well. So my mortgage payment is $1,715, and I have 2 renters bringing in $850 a piece. Plus they pay their portion of the water bill and the utilities. So at that point, I'm essentially out of pocket $0 to live. Besides whenever some sort of maintenance issue comes up, which they have, I had to completely replace a AC unit and a furnace, which cost me $5,000.
Ouch.
But I was prepared for that. So I had a large amount of money in reserves, which is super important. Doesn't matter. Even though you're house hacking, you still need to have a reserves account. So those are a little bit of the numbers, but how I actually found these tenants was, one of them was a good friend from college who I know was making good money, and I have known him for a number of years and know how financially responsible he is. So that is how I found my first tenant. I did not do any sort of.
Were you a little nervous about that? About, hey, buddy, come on, you can rent this place out. What happened if it went south?
Yeah, so I wasn't too concerned about it. I didn't screen them for like credit score or income or criminal history because I had known him for so long.
Okay.
But we did still sign a 6-month lease to start off with. And the reason I did a 6-month lease is because he moved in December, and the typical renter cycle is in the summer months. So I wanted to start him in December, and then when his lease ended, it'd be the spring/summer month, and I could, likely find a new tenant if things did not go well, much easier in the summer months than if I would have signed a 12-month lease with him than in the winter months. Him and I, we still signed the lease.
Let's stop right there real quick, Connor. Guys, this is very, very important, especially if you live in climate-dependent states like Denver, where it gets cold in the winter. People do not want to move in the winter. So just like Connor said, he got his friend the tenant in December, had a 6-month lease. So if things didn't go right, he would be moving out in June, and he can re-rent the property, barring, doing some fresh paint, everything like that, in July. And then that new tenant can be put on an annual cycle. So they will be out, at the end of every June. So he will be right in that prime moving season. So guys, keep that in mind, that when you're in a climate dependent state, you never want to move tenants in and out during the winter months. Okay, Connor, sorry about that.
Oh, no, great point, Marcus. And everyone, that is a great point. So to find my second tenant, I used Facebook Marketplace. In Denver, there's a number of roommates groups. So there's also groups looking for people that are looking for subleasing and stuff like that. So that is where I found the second roommate to rent from me. And this roommate I did not know previously, but him and I messaged a little bit back and forth. And then I did do screening on him. So I use a tool called Cozy. It's a completely free resource for small-time landlords, and they have tenant screening. It costs the tenant $40, and that got me their background check for criminal history. It gave me a credit report on them, and then also gave me a report on the amount of debt they have and their track record for paying bills on time and stuff like that. So that is how I screened my second tenant.
Okay, so guys, he used Cozy. That's cozy.co, COZY.co. I use Cozy as well for my tenants. It's a wonderful platform. It's very easy to use, very user friendly. So if you find yourself getting your first house hack or your first rental property, you can definitely check out Cozy, COZY.co. And that will help you screen those tenants, pull background checks, pull credit reports. That way you can know exactly who you have in your units, because believe me, people paint a rosy picture when you're first meeting them, but once they get into your unit, then you see the real picture. So, okay, so you use Cozy, you found this tenant on Facebook Marketplace. Never done that before. That's new.
Yeah.
All right. So you got him in there, everything checked out. How did it go moving him in?
So everything has gone well so far. The roommates seem to be pretty friendly. We all get along rather well. I have them set up on automatic payments through Cozy every single month, so I don't have to talk to them about, hey, you haven't paid the rent yet, pay me now. So it's really similar to just living with roommates in a rental property, except for I own the property and they pay me rent. But it's a very similar situation to just living with, a couple of friends. It's really not bad at all. And for anyone in their young 20s, they're probably living with roommates as anyways. So there's no reason to not continue to live with roommates and just house hack instead of renting.
Yeah, and that's great, because just looking at the numbers, I mean, you're absolutely living for free.
Mm-hmm.
So with that money that you are going to use to pay your mortgage, you're saving it, you're preparing for your next house hack or next rental. Kind of what's next?
Yeah, so at this point, I have a wealth of options ahead of me. So I can continue to buy another house hack and do that. I can continue to live in my current house hack and invest out of state where the numbers make more sense. I could, just save all that money and put it in index funds and save for, 3, 4, 5 years down the road when I feel like I am ready to tackle an apartment complex. Really, the world is my oyster, because I am living for free and I'm saving, if I was to be renting, I'd be paying about $1,000 a month. If I was paying my entire mortgage, I'd be paying $1,700 a month. So I am saving about all in total, probably $3,000 to $4,000 a month into a savings account where I can do whatever I like with that. What I'm leaning towards right now is buying rental properties out of Denver, just because the numbers seem to make a little bit more sense in an area of Michigan that I like called Grand Rapids.
Yep.
It's a smaller city, but it's quickly growing, has a lot of job growth, has a lot of fun things to do in the area, and is one of the fastest growing cities in the state of Michigan. So I plan on likely in the next 6 months buying a rental property in Grand Rapids. They're a 3-bed, 2-bath rental that, may be able to rent out for about $1,000 to $1,200 a month, is about $120,000 to $150,000. So very close to that 1% rule.
Mm-hmm.
And currently that is what I'm looking at right now. Okay.
Very good. Very good. And that's actually what I've been telling people. There's been a misconception about the Midwest, everybody, because I'm originally from Illinois, so we're neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
People would say, don't be in the Midwest. Everybody is, leaving the Midwest, but there's some really great rental return numbers, in the Midwest. So you have the Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, Minnesota, Wisconsin corridor, where there's great returns when it comes to rental property. I rent property back in Illinois just for that same exact reason. The numbers here in Phoenix wasn't making much sense, and I could pick up properties there, for a little bit of nothing, and hit that 1% rule. So if you don't mind, why don't you share with us what is the 1% rule for those that don't know?
Yeah, so the 1% rule is just a rule of thumb for quickly evaluating a rental property. So what it means is the property should rent out for 1% of the purchase price. So if you purchase a property at $100,000, the rent should be roughly $1,000. And if it is, then it will likely cash flow. Now, that's just a rule of thumb and is a quick and dirty way to just look at properties on the MLS or Zillow or any other resource all right, this could be a good deal. It is worth looking into further. Now, it doesn't mean that, all right, this meets the 1% rule. It's guaranteed to work. There could be a lot of deferred maintenance up on the property that would lead you to have to put more money aside for capital expenditures. It could be in a really, really terrible neighborhood and actually only rent for more like $800 if it's purchase price of $100,000. There's a long list of factors that can mean that the property wouldn't work, but in general, it's likely going to work out if it hits the 1% rule. And there's even cases where even more like the 0.8% rule makes a lot of sense. If you're in an area where the taxes are super low and you can pick up a property that is almost brand new construction, so you don't have to set aside a ton of money for capital expenditures, or if you're able to put down like 50% compared to 20%, the 1% rule may make sense.
Yep,
Or
absolutely.
the 0.8, like a 0.5 or 0.8% rule may make sense.
Yep. So guys, keep that in mind. You got to know your numbers in real estate. You know, a lot of people, they get blinded by what the property looks like or what neighborhood it's in. You know, you definitely need to make sure you know your numbers also and do your due diligence. So, and not only that, I mean, you're setting the money to the side, but also I know Denver, you're gaining some appreciation, especially with the build out of that third bedroom. Have you done an appraisal or anything like that, or just run comps to see if the property is worth more than what it prior was?
Yeah. So I actually in July refinanced the property, and with that I got an appraisal. So I
There you
bought
go.
the house in December of 2018, added the third bedroom, and then got the two upstairs bedroom rented. I lived in the basement bedroom and, was doing that for about 6 months, and then kind of looked at interest rates. They had dropped significantly. So my interest rate when I first bought the property was 4.875, and 7 months later, I was able to refinance out of an FHA loan
Yep.
into a conventional loan. So what happened there was I lowered my interest rate from 4.875 to 4%. My PMI payment lowered. I got into a conventional loan, which means that once I hit the 80% loan to value rate on the property, I am able to drop the private mortgage insurance.
Mm-hmm.
My payment dropped about $200. And with that, I got an appraisal on the property, and the property appraised for $280,000 compared to the $260,000 that I bought it for. And all in total, I think I put about roughly $5,000 into the property to add that third bedroom. So in those 7 months of purchasing the property, fixing it up, and getting it rented out, I was able to force about $20,000 of appreciation to it.
Smart play. And as you can see, guys, it doesn't always take money to make money. You know, people always say it takes money to make money. It takes real estate, in order to make money. Real estate can make money and pull money out of thin air. Just like Connor said, by putting $5,000 into the property, he was able to refinance it. He already bought it, at a slight discount with 10 grand, put 5 into it, and now it appreciates for 285. So he's positive, on the acquisition, and yet he's not paying any money into it because his tenants are paying the money into it. So very smart, Connor, very, very smart. So if you had to do it all over again, would you do anything different? Would you strategically place your finances in a different order? Kind of, what would you do differently if you would do anything different?
Yeah, so I'm very happy with the decision that I made to buy the property that I did. If I was to do things a little bit differently, I could have waited probably 3 to 4 more months and would have been able to get my 2018 tax filed, and the lender would have been able to look at my 2018 tax filing and saw that I made more than just my base salary, and they would have been able to use some of that commission income. And at that point, I would have been able to qualify for a larger loan, and I could have likely bought maybe like a 5-bed, 2-bath house in a different part of Denver, and done a different house hacking strategy with renting a large house by the room. But I set the goal for myself back in the beginning of 2018 that I would buy a property by the end of 2018. And I was able to meet that goal. So I'm happy I was able to meet that goal. Yep. But hindsight's 2020. If I was a little bit more patient and waited 3 to 4 months, I likely could have bought a slightly different property that would have worked out just as well, if not slightly better. But I'm happy that I jumped in with both feet and was able to meet that goal of buying the property in 2018.
Yeah, and we all know hindsight is 2020, but
Hmm.
it's, kudos to you for setting that goal at the beginning of the year and accomplishing that goal, by the end of the year. So, um, what do you think was your greatest commodity outside of having the capital? What do you think was the greatest resource that you had to help you get to where you are outside of money?
I think it's my thirst for continuing education. Um, the best, like everyone harps on education is how you get wealthy, how you just like, make good money and stuff like that. And that's why everyone goes to college. And college is awesome, but the real education that people need to focus on is self-education outside of traditional classrooms. So by reading books such as Rich Dad Poor Dad, Richest Man in Babylon, any book by Bigger Pockets, by listening to podcasts such as yours or the Bigger Pockets podcast or podcasts on mentality. I really, really think that my greatest commodity is my ability to self-educate myself.
Okay, great. And you mentioned some great books, man. You mentioned Richest Man in Babylon, which I've read a couple of times actually. We
Mm-hmm.
all know Rich Dad Poor Dad is kind of, not kind of, but one of the great inspirations for a lot of real estate investors. And like you said,
Mm-hmm.
self-education. You have to have that time and that discipline to say, I'm gonna turn off the TV. I'm gonna read this book because I know this book is gonna make me better. Instead of watching Dancing with
Mm-hmm.
the Stars or The Bachelor, Bachelorette, all of that other garbage, you need to educate yourself. And as a 25-year-old man, you're doing good. You're in a great position. What do you believe is one of your greatest challenges for you progressing and moving forward?
That's a great question. I think one of my greatest challenges is focusing on one niche, I guess, in real estate investing. So, like I mentioned earlier, the world is my oyster. I'm not exactly positive what my next deal will look like, but I know it'll happen in the next probably 6 to 8 months. So, being able to focus on one aspect of real estate investing, I think, will be my greatest struggle, but it's something that I'm actively working on.
Okay. So what do you think is your overall goal? Let's just say 10 years down the road, you're 35 years old.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think
Mm-hmm.
Connor Anderson portfolio looks like?
Yeah, so I think what it would look like is maybe roughly 100 units of cash flowing rental properties, and cash flowing enough to where I have the option of working or I have the option of, not working and just building up my own business, but also having the flexibility to, spend the time how I want to. So I'm really, really active outdoors. I enjoy skiing. I enjoy training and competing in triathlons. I enjoy spending time on the water. So, having a portfolio that pays for my lifestyle, to the point where I can do whatever I want is exactly where I'd love to be in, 10 years.
Perfect, man. I think you're well on your way. Where you're at, you're educating yourself, not only educating yourself, but your circle of influence being right there in Bigger Pockets, around other investors, seasoned investors, like Brandon
Mm-hmm.
and, Craig and Mindy and, Scott, and I could go on and on and on. But, it's really, really having that circle of influence, educating yourself, and everything like that. So guys, the books that Connor mentioned, Richest Man in Babylon, I'll have a link below. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I'll have a link below in the show notes in regards to that. So Connor, tell me, I know you're doing some things with Bigger Pockets, working with Bigger Pockets. What do you have going on
Mm-hmm.
there with the BP family?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, we just finished up the 2019 conference, and overall it was a huge success, but we are already planning on the 2020 conference. So, my main focus at Bigger Pockets is, of course, continuing to sell out all the inventory for the podcast and the newsletter, but also continuing to make sure that our conference is as big and successful as possible. So, my goal, I had 30 exhibitors at the 2019 conference. In 2020, I want to have 50 exhibitors. So continue to grow and scale that portion of the business is a huge focus of mine right now.
Okay, perfect. So, Connor, how can we get in touch with you for other aspiring investors? You seem like you could definitely be an influencer to those that are either in college or coming out of college, with your story. Mm-hmm. How can we reach you? How can we get in touch with you?
Yep. So the best place likely would be my email. So Connor@biggerpockets.com, Connor spelled CONNOR, or Instagram is another great way to reach out to me. Connor T. Anderson is my Instagram. And I'm also on Bigger Pockets, so feel free to find me on Bigger Pockets and send me a personal message. I love connecting with young investors and hopefully shedding some inspiration or knowledge on them.
Sounds great, Connor. Well, I want to thank you, man, for definitely sharing, with the We Love Equity family. I think your story definitely will be an inspiration, as I said before, for those younger that's looking to get started, and even those that may be a little bit older and are saying, okay, I need to change and pivot and change direction. So, Connor, I want to thank you. All of the information, guys, regarding Connor, his Instagram, how to contact him, the books, everything will be in the show notes. That way you can find it. And Connor, I really appreciate you. And I thank you again, man. So one last word, any last word of inspiration you want to give the listeners before we sign off here?
Of course. So a quote that I live my life by is, "You've never arrived, you're always becoming." And what that means to me is never being complacent in where you are in life right now. You can always strive to become better, whether it's, in your relationships, in your physical health, in your wealth, or even in your education. So, just live your life by you've never arrived, you're always becoming, and you'll go great places. But thank you so much for having me on today, Marcus. This has been a lot of fun, and look forward to, continuing the conversation and, having a lot of fun together at Bigger Pockets 2020 conference.
All right. Well, sounds great, Connor. I will definitely be at the 2020 conference. As you know, I'll definitely look out for you. So again, thank you and much success to you, Connor, and keep going and keep pushing forward.
Absolutely. Thanks, Marcus.
Thank you for listening to today's show. I picked up some great actionable items, and I'm sure you did as well. If so, let me know. You can always reach me via social media at facebook.com/MRCS Maloney, Twitter at MRCS Maloney, and of course, IG at MRCS Maloney. You can also always reach me via email at mmaloney@equityri.com. Make sure you reach out to our guests as well. You can always find their contact information in the show notes below. If you have not subscribed already, what are you waiting for? Join the family. And while you're at it, leave us a 5-star review. This is how we tell if we're providing you with what you need for your journey. If there's someone you would like for me to interview, or if there's a subject matter you would like for me to cover, please let me know. Finally, if you're looking for additional information about real estate investing, go to equityrealestateblog.com. Also, youtube.com/Marcus Maloney. Until next time, family, always enjoy the journey.